This interesting, to say the least, legal case, criminal defense attorney Sara Azari. So obviously that the jinx itself would be critical to this case, but it still has not been decided yet whether or not that confession or even parts of that documentary is admissible in this case.
Of course, and the issues, I mean, these are some very fascinating issues in this circumstantial case that's going back, 2 decades. The first issue is whether that's even a confession. That's not a traditional confession. A confession is usually when somebody asks you a question, you answer the question, and you are incriminating yourself. Although technically it could be a confession, there's all these issues about who he was talking to. I mean, he was talking to himself, but was he referring to maybe somebody else? There's a undertone of sarcasm there, if you have watched the documentary, that I think that as defense attorneys can put a spin on it. But the other issue, too, with the documentary is whether the LAPD was working hand in hand with the producers. And that poses a lot of constitutional issues that I think would work in Durst's favor, because to what extent was the HBO production company behind this acting on behalf of the LAPD as opposed to just independently coming across the additional evidence, the handwritten note from 1999, etc. So I think that for most of us, when we watch the documentary, it's some damning evidence. And I certainly think that the prosecution is banking on trying to get those pieces of evidence admitted against Durst. But I do think that from a defense perspective, it can certainly be explained what he was doing in the bathroom. Did he know whether the mic was on or off? I mean, we wear mics all the time and we forget to turn it off sometimes. It's kind of a normal thing for a guy who's not used to it. And to what extent was he really talking about himself as opposed to referring to somebody else? I mean, it sounds like he talks to himself a lot. He's got some kind of a...
It's an interesting sign of the times to have this documentary, this television program, and have this evidence on a microphone. His attorneys have been saying they've been waiting for this day in court. They wanted to go to court on this. What do you make of his appearance there, coming in the wheelchair with the neck brace?
I think, just based on his age alone, even without the neck brace, there's a certain degree of sympathy that I think that the jury will ultimately have for him. But he's not going to get the same level of sympathy that we've seen with cases like Michael Jackson, O.J. Simpson, Robert Blake. They had celebrity status because of their talent, and people on a jury could relate to that. They have memories of what they've experienced with these people on television. Robert Durst is a celebrity because of his wealth. He's a wealthy man, and to that extent, I don't think he's going to get the celebrity sympathy, but I definitely think that based on his age, his handicaps, and what he's going through medically, that he will get some sympathy. And he's also a very charming man.
But he's also well known because of his past, too. And,
there was that
one case back in 2001 where he was essentially acquitted of murder, murdering...
In Texas.
In Texas,
right.
Murdering. Now, all of that stuff, that past that he has, how much of those details would be admissible in court?
Well, he wasn't convicted of that, so he can't technically. There's no evidence that he had a conviction for a similar offense, right? But you have to also understand that there was the disappearance of his wife back in the 80s that is very suspect, and that actually is the motive the prosecutors are alleging in this case.
Right.
So he has a colorful past, and I think the prosecution is going to try to bring in as much of this as they can, and we're going to see a lot of pretrial motions in this case. I don't think this case is going to trial for at least another year, and that's the soonest.
All right.
So,
and
thank you.
The murder of his neighbor was 16 years ago. All right, Sara Azari, thank you much.
Thank you.
We'll all be